Okay, so this panel and the earlier talks have been very comprehensive because we've heard a lot of different models whereby academic discoveries can be taken to the market. In the morning, I brought a perspective from someone who thinks about big pharma and someone who has not so much skin in the game, similar to what David presented. We're more like trying to facilitate the whole process, but we have people here who really have a lot of skin in the game. They have launched companies on the basis of academic discoveries. We heard stories that are more like contract research organizations or like service providers, such as the story with the zebrafish. And then we also heard about this idea of repurposing compounds that other people have developed. So there are many ways to crack this problem. We've heard some of them. And I will ask the first question, and we'll go through each member of the panel. And after that, I would much prefer that the audience asks questions. So the question is, considering that you all have come into the problem of translating academic discoveries from different perspectives, what is the aspect that you have found to be most challenging trying to do this? Is it the quality of the science? Is it the money? Is it the relationship with the different stakeholders? What is the one thing that you say, God, I wish that wasn't so hard? David, do you want to get it rolling?
So I think for us, looking at the Dementia Consortium and other initiatives we've put together, the hardest thing is to create the common purpose between the delivery of fundamental science and what pharma needs. And the way we've come through that is to be an independent body. We don't have an axe to grind with academia, we don't have an axe to grind with pharma. All we're interested in is getting new therapies to patients. And therefore we can behave, and other organizations like MRCT can behave as a trusted intermediary to identify that common purpose and bring multiple parties together. I think that's to overcome that challenge has been incredibly fruitful.
Antonio?
I think if you asked me that question a few years ago, I would say that one of the main problems was that we were speaking different languages, so that there was like this misalignment was up to the level of talking to each other between people in academia and people in pharma. Now I think we have no other option but to understand ourselves, so that now we all know that we need to collaborate for different reasons. For one, so people in academia are needing more funding and are being pushed more to collaborate, and I think I showed that in one of my slides, that we need to do things in a different way. Now I think, and I explained it, or I tried to explain during the presentation, I think now the most challenging problem is probably this lack of mechanisms to cross this bridge, to cross this divide between the end of research in academia, which normally ends up in a paper, and the point where we would like it. But I think that's something that we already know, and in fact we've all been showing ways to try, so we are all working on ways to try to go over that divide.
Yeah, the value of that. Thank you. Carlos, what's your take on this?
Well,
you have to turn the microphone on.
Okay, now. Well, I was personally transitioning from being an academic researcher on my previous life to an entrepreneur and now to a company man. And there are a number of things that you need to understand and to understand quickly before you die. And you were mentioning some of them, and they reflect on how the different or the misalignment or the basic misalignment that they are in between the two worlds. So the first one is that as a scientist, you are always fascinated by plenty of questions, and they are always lovely and interesting intellectual questions to be solved. But still, I mean, when you are really struggling with a program, with a drug into a company, you need really to attach to the key points, to these 3-4 experiments that are going to be the ones you need to either to kill the project or either to move forward. this project and to eventually find a partner. And the second part is that well, you need to have a personal view or aligning the different stakeholders. So when you set up a company, or when you make a transition between an academic scientist to a company, to accompaniment, so you need to understand who are the stakeholders, which is the language that you need to talk, and basically how are you going to finance this company. And this is something that requires the vision to define the unmet medical need, the market proposition, the quality of science, and the capability to perform. So this is basically my personal reflection about that. So when you said, well, I wish that wouldn't have been so hard. Yes.
Yeah, that's pretty. So it's very simple then to solve this problem. Eh?
Oh yeah.
And your comment about the science at the beginning reminds me of something that we used to say back at the journal when we rejected a paper and people were very upset. Somebody told us once, nobody likes being told that their child is ugly. All right, so here's a little bit of the same. Nobody likes being told that their target is really no good.
Yeah.
Okay, so Raúl, what's your take on this problem?
Yes, my view on this, science is great. You have seen this in the publications and in the patents, so I don't think there's a problem on science in Spain. Money is always a problem, yes, but it's not the main problem. Okay, with money you can do a lot of things, but you will not probably bring a product to the market that is not having an activity. I think the main problem is the process of transferring the knowledge from the university or from the academia to whatever company, SOM Biotech or Oryzon or whatever company, is willing to push this product to the market, because the product has to arrive to the patient, and the patient means the market, okay, according to the legislation. And in this process, I'm surprised that, for instance, at SOM Biotech we do only have 3 proposals of repurposing drugs from the academia, and sometimes they do not even come from the transfer office of that specific place. Okay, we have to look for them, or the investigator has some interest to show them to us. But this process of doing science, protecting it or not, depends. Okay, but transferring the process to an organism, let's say an organism, but not say a company that is willing to push the drug. Okay, this process sometimes is not well done, many times it's not well done, too much atomized, and it takes a lot of efforts to identify things that are really there on the desks, waiting for someone to take attention to them.
That's interesting. So in a way, the problem is operational. The processes in place are not that efficient. That's pretty interesting. Ainhoa, what's your take on this?
Okay, my short experience. I think we have to collaborate more. I think academic world see us as see the private company as enemies, or they are not non-profit. So I think this idea should be changed.
Okay, and Javier.
Well, me like Carlos, I am coming also from the academia, and we are here in the dark side of the moon, probably, no? And money, of course, is always a problem in a company, in a biotech company, or in a startup, or when the company is in the death of valley. This is a really problem. But probably the key point in this business is to good management.
Good management.
Good management to focus the problem that you have from the beginning of the company, and in the critical points where you have in a point of go, no go, you need to get a good staff to manage the company. And I feel that this is very difficult here in Spain, because there are not many people that have worked in both sides of the moon. And probably this is the big problem that the companies in Spain have, from my viewpoint.
Yeah. Over lunch we were talking about this a little bit, and I'm going to say that from everything we've heard, the correct answer is management, actually. That's the correct answer. The main problem. About money, I will say one thing that struck me the other day. I went to this panel, they invited me, and I was in a different panel, but I sat through this other panel that was just before mine. And the title of the panel, it was a partnering conference, and the title of the panel was Flying with Angels, right? And it was about how is it that you get an angel investor, which is a rich guy, to invest in your science, right? They wanted to give some advice. And one of the angel investors, a very rich guy, said something that to me was very striking. He had launched like 30, 40 companies, right? So he had a lot of experience, and that's why he gets credibility. He said, you know what? The problem at this point is not really the money, because to me, biotechnology is actually a low risk, low reward kind of investment. We tend to think about it as a high risk, high reward, because if you get a drug to the market, it's quite great. But the reality is that with $3 million, I could start 3 or 4 biotech companies, whereas with $3 million, now I can only start 1 information technologies company, because now the programmers are so expensive and the development costs are so high that I prefer to invest in biotech and pay 3 small companies, and 1 of them may survive. To me, that was pretty unexpected. And from somebody who thinks about this often and burns money on this, is something we're thinking about. Anyway, so with that, why don't we open this for discussion from the crowd? I would like to hear people's points of view. I don't know if we have microphones or somebody who can help us. Oh yeah, you please. So we have a question here, right there. Yeah, please go ahead.
Hello. Yeah, I just want to have contribute to this discussion with one point that is related to repurposing. So probably Raúl can help me with this. You know, to me, coming from academia, the main problem that I have is the difference in priorities. My priority is to the proof of concept and to cure, and the priority of the company many times it is to cure and to get money. And I think this is a big difference, and I will show you this with repurposing. I've been working with a company to repurpose a drug that they are using for a different thing, and we went through all the preclinical studies, and by the time that we have to jump into the clinical studies, which should be easier because of the repurposing nature of the drug, they didn't want to do it. And the reason is that they are making about $1 billion every year working with this compound in their specific disease, and they don't want to put that investment at risk. So how can we get around this problem with repurposing?
Well, I would probably say that it's a general problem of the pharmaceutical industry, but it's not a problem. A company has to look for money, because if it does not earn money, it cannot survive. And not even you at the academia. If you don't have money to pay your collaborators, you're not going to survive. So money is always a driver. It's always a driver. And without money, you cannot put a drug in the market. But what you can do if the drug is working and is useful is to publish the data. And the physicians will do whatever they can do with the drug. Okay? The data is public. And if the product as a purpose drug is available in the market, then they may or may not use it for a new indication if there is enough data. Okay, so it's a free and community use of the drug. Okay, but you're right. Many companies, if they realize that the amount of money to put at risk for the development of the drug is high, they are not willing to do that. Yes, because they compete the products on that, you know, and that's true. But I think it's not a problem. Thanks to that, they put a lot of money in the development of drugs, and there is the market. Even in many cases, they failed. You know, for instance, Carlos is running a company with 1 candidate right now, starting phase 2 next year, and probably he has invested millions of euros. I'm not sure if he's going to say, but millions of euros. Okay, and this is at risk of some investors that probably can lose everything. So they had the right to say, I'm not going to put any more money. They had the right because they take a risk, you know.
You know, and one of the things that your company has been very smart about seeing your slides is the fact that when you're repurposing, you're focusing on rare diseases, and the development costs for rare diseases are much lower than cardiovascular disease, for example. Yes. If you were to try to repurpose something for heart failure, very good luck with that. Right? Who's going to pay for the late-stage development? You wouldn't be able to raise enough money. Whereas for rare diseases, that's where this can be successful. So I commend you for that. Well, good decision. Good management, right there.
Yeah, if I can add something to that, so I think.
Yeah, so you add and then Javier.
Yeah. So what you saw in the past was that if a company owned an asset and then they were not interested in it because, well, you need to prioritize, as Raúl said, you have a certain amount of money and you have to prioritize, then it was dead. It wasn't going nowhere. But now I think everything is much more porous. So you are seeing, and well, we have internal examples where things that we were developing, they looked good, but at some point in time it was like, oh, okay, we are not going to continue with the development because it's not on our strategic interest. Well, we are looking for outsourcing that. So we are not going to develop, but this is nice. So is anybody interested in doing that? And you are seeing that more and more.
Javier, your comment.
Yes, the first thing that I want to ask to Antonio is that companies and academia can perform big science. Okay, we are in the differences of the world, but the companies that are here in this table, and a lot of companies in the world, need to do a very good science to put their products in the next step. This is the first thing. The second thing is that probably there is not only two parts. Maybe there are at least three players. One is the academia, the public institution. The other is the biotech companies that are very, very different to the pharma companies. I understand that the academia is working in a specific target and a specific molecule. And have enough resource to elucidate the mechanism of action and to perform preclinical studies. I understand that biotech companies are covering the gap between the academia and the big pharma because we understand both worlds. One, because many people that are in the biotech companies usually are coming from the university because we are in spin-off, we are a startup from the university. We understand this thinking about how science may be done, and we also understand that you need to perform several boring works to go to the next step that is the big pharma.
Thank you. Any more questions from the audience? Surely there are some. Yeah, don't be shy. I mean, there's been good discussion. So while another question from the audience comes, let's go through another round of questions for each of you. So if you were to start over in this business, what would be the advice that you would give to a young person who's trying to commercialize their science? Where would you start? So let's start now from the end. Javier.
The first thing is to start to think in commercialization.
To what?
To think in commercialization.
To think in commercial terms.
Yeah, this is the first thing that you must do when you're working in your lab. The thing that I'm doing in my lab, can I commercialize it to other people, to other labs, to other companies? This is a good question. This is the first question that I had when I started 11 years ago in the company that I work in now.
Yeah, so you would ask to encourage people to really think like businessmen. Like, yeah, that's useful. I know, what would you recommend to people if they want to get into this, or you would say to people, don't do it?
No, I think I will encourage people to do it.
Okay.
I totally agree to my colleague. And yeah, commercialization and be flexible. I don't know. You have to adapt to the times or to.
Right. I think that's actually very, very important to be flexible and to realize that this scientific project that you were doing, that you thought about as your baby, is not just your baby. It's other people are going to be involved in it. So flexibility is very important. Raúl, what would you recommend to people? Somebody who's beginning to get into this, to dabble in this world, or would you say to them, don't do it?
Oh no, I would say do it, and don't worry if you fail, just do it again. One day you will not fail, but you will never know if it's far away or not. I would say talk and talk and talk to people. You know, what I've realized from the difference in the United States or Spain is that in the United States many people talk with many people at the same time. So they have the opportunity to exchange their ideas and what they are doing with others. And in Spain, we are a little bit more shy. Okay, for me, it's very surprising if you are in the United States in a table just having lunch, and then an investor arrives and says, "I have 10 million to invest in a company. Who is going to tell me the history?" I have never seen this here before. Not even from investors, and of course never from a researcher that comes and says, "I have a drug to be repurposed in Alzheimer. Do you want to listen about it?" You have to look for it, to look for publications, for patents and things like that. So it's better to talk with people, to find through internet people and talk and talk and talk and repeat. You will fail many times, don't worry. Exit is very close to the last failing, but you never know where it is, of course.
Yeah, so networking then is your one of your key pieces. If one were to summarize it, networking and develop a strong network. Good, thank you. Carlos, what would you advise the young people in the crowd?
Well, I was having some discussions over lunch with a young lady here about that. The first thing is that the demographics of science in any country basically reflects that nobody, I mean, not everybody can basically get a tenure. So most of you young researchers sooner or later will have to face the fact that you need to go to the industry. So this is one thing. The second thing is that to create a company or to participate in a startup is probably the more erotic thing that you can do as an entrepreneur. when you have the really dark days, you have some of them as well. I mean, you can always find people that cheers you up a bit. I remember always a very important company, man in Barcelona. One of those days that I was a bit down, and he told me this. I mean, this is the more funny thing that you can do with your clothes on. So, and I think that is still true. It still holds true. I mean, so going to practical things. I mean, to run a company, you need to understand that it's like a Rubik cube. So if you focus too much on science, you are going to fail. If you focus too much on money, you are going to fail. If you focus too much on networking, you are going to fail. So you need to have the right combination of all these skills. And what you need probably is to have the right team from the beginning. One of the things that we did at Oryzon from day one, and I think it was probably by accident, but it was a big success, was that we were having a very strong financial department, a very strong financial chief officer from day one. And this guy was absolutely obsessed from day one that we should get every day more money. And at the same time, Tamara and myself, that we were the scientists of the company, we were busy doing the science and trying to develop the skills of the company. So yeah, you need to be aware that at the end of the day, the history is only written by the survivors. So you better survive. And to survive, you have to be very flexible, as it has been said here. So yeah, I mean, I think that again, this is not an advice, but a set of them. But I don't have a single advice.
Yeah, no, but that's very useful. And so the corollary of this is that doing this is not for the faint of heart. You really need to be tough. Antonio, what's your advice from the big pharma side? What's your perspective here?
Well, I think I fully agree with what has been said. I would maybe add, well, the unmet need or more the niche. So you have to think, you have to be sure that whatever you are developing has got a market. Let's say that there is a group of patients and that will fit into that group of patients. And yeah, it has already been mentioned that I think as an answer to the first question, that the decision points are very important, that something that is lacking is training. So I know it's difficult to get training. It's not like there is a fixed scheduled training for this. But this is something that most people that come from academia, typically the spin-outs, they come from academia, and they are venturing into a brave new world, and most of the times now they have to learn just by trial and error. And I think that some training, or where we, so I mean people from big pharma, need to be involved in telling what are the decision points and what are the real market needs, that would be really a very good point.
Yeah, that's very profound. Sometimes the academic scientists and many people out there don't even know what they don't know, and that's problematic. David, what's your advice or your comment on this?
That's exactly to the point I was going to make. You made a decision to work in an incredibly challenging field that is littered with failure. I think to have a realistic understanding of what you can and what you can't do. When you start to run out of your own capabilities, look to those who can help you, and that's where the networking comes in, and the ability to be flexible. So everything that's been said is absolutely true, that's been said at this table today. Know your limitations, and know when to shout for help, know when to go and get that training and go and partner with somebody.
Thank you. If I can add my own piece of advice, I was saying this over lunch to some people. It's what they tell you from day one in any management school. Never be afraid to surround yourself with people who are smarter than you. Right? And academics are not very good at that. Jose, you have a question.
Yeah, maybe this is more for Raúl, but anyone could answer, is concerning the repurposing. As a basic scientist, I'm a complete ignorant on how is the model of business if it's a compound that is very old and maybe it's cheap and is already prescribed for other conditions, and you have now to invest to prove the efficacy in a new, and that's going to be expensive. So what's then when it comes to the market for a new application, how is the business model there? You have to increase the price of something that is already cheap for a different condition. It's something that I don't really understand how is the model there.
Yes, in repurposing drugs, the risk is more the commercial risk than the technical risk. Okay, if you are using the same range of posologies that have been approved, you know that it's safe in humans, or at least you know the safety profile. Okay, you know the quality because it's manufactured according to GMPs and final product and so on, and it has been approved. You only have to demonstrate efficacy, which is a technical risk. But the main risk of this kind of products is the commercial risk. Once they are in the market as old products, another companies can make a generic for the primary indication. If you have a patent of use on the new indication, you can avoid that, but not the primary indication probably because it's of patent and there are generics and the price may be low. Okay. Sometimes you have to develop a new formulation. For instance, the product for TTR amyloidosis, the half-life is very short, 2 hours and a half, and it cannot stabilize the protein in 24 hours. So we have developed a new formulation, a slower release, 24 hours release of the drug in blood, to guarantee a 24 hours administration and efficacy of the drug. So you have a new formulation and you can protect this new formulation, and as it is very different to the product as it is in the market, okay, you cannot switch or use of label the drug as it is. Other times, as I said before, the product for Huntington disease is only in Japan and Korea, so it's not in Europe, neither in the United States. So as it is not available in the market, you cannot use it. You may import it from Japan, okay, but that's very difficult to do. So in this case, you can avoid this use of the drug because it is in the market. Pricing is also a very important thing, okay, as there is a reference price for that product. You are not expected to obtain a very high price on a new repurposed drugs, but that depends on the drug. In orphan indications, that's different. Okay, the reference compound we have for amyloidosis tafamidis is 140,000 euros per patient year. So we're assuming in our business model that even selling at 5 or 6 times less than that, okay, a drug equal in efficacy will make good numbers for any company. So it depends on every drug, and that's the first thing you have to look from the beginning. That's difficult for scientists, I understand. I have been in the pharmaceutical industry for more than 25 years before starting at SOM Biotech, but you have to look at the market and say, this compound will make a difference in the market in terms of business or not. If not, and you are not willing to develop it, just publish it, and maybe someone can do something in the future.
And then as a corollary, when it is not going to be a good business, is there any public initiative to try to launch that, because it's going to be a social benefit and not really it's going to be economic benefit for the society in the long run?
Yes, but in terms...
Is there any precedent for any application? Or I'm thinking, for instance, with lithium, for some time was considered that maybe it might be useful for Alzheimer's. And there were some small clinical trials, but the big pharma, if I understood it right, they were never interested in running those clinical trials. But maybe at some point, some public organization might consider repurposing when there is good indication, although not business, not pharmaceutical business behind that. Is there any case of this launched by a public initiative?
Mm-hmm. Yes, but in terms of the public initiative, that must be encouraged for these drugs that the industry is not willing to launch. Okay, you have to have the product approved, launched, and someone has to manufacture and distribute it. So at the end of the day, there must be a company under the product, because if not, the public helps and initiatives will help. To the approval point, but not to the distribution point of the drug. That there is not, as far as I know, any public organism in charge of these drugs that are not, I would say, useful for the big pharmaceutical industries.
Yeah, well, the NIH has a little bit of that, and maybe you, David, want to comment on what you guys have been doing at the MRCT, because part of what you've done, I mean, that's how I met you, I think, through the repurposing initiative that you guys have. Maybe you want to talk about it for 2 minutes.
So there's a number of things going on. Within MRCT, we have an initiative called NeuroMap. MAP stands for Medicines Acceleration Program, which basically looks inside pharmaceutical companies for molecules that have been deprioritized. And where we believe that by spending a certain amount of money on these, we could reinvigorate that pharma company to put the molecule back into their portfolio. And we fund that through charities and foundations across Europe and the US. But to your point, one that comes to mind is a different model around social investment bonds, which have been used in the States to help rehabilitate offenders, prisoners. And it's paid for through philanthropic donation up front, but it is repaid back to those philanthropists and back into the business through the savings, in this case, that will be made to a healthcare provider. So you can imagine, therefore, a big lump of cash coming in at the beginning. Once you're successful, you then have the savings that pay back that investment rather than a profit-based model. And that's something we can certainly look at for generic drugs. And there's a guy called Bruce Bloom from the US who is now operating in the UK, pulling on the National Health Service as a single payer entity to be able to test those scenarios out.
Terrific, thank you very much. That's it's good that you had an opportunity to mention that. It's a very good initiative, and again, the NIH has something that along the same lines. So there are a few public initiatives. Any other questions? Yeah, you can do it. So is it time for coffee? Yeah. It's almost time for coffee. So that we have a little bit more time for coffee, let me finish by asking you a final question to each of you. Why don't you, in 30 seconds, summarize what would be the take-home message that you would want these people to take with them in the context of what we've been talking about? If you wanted one thing for this crowd to remember, what is your bottom line here? So David, do you want to start?
I think there's three messages in my one message. Quality science that's reproducible, making sure we've done experiments enough time to give future partners confidence in your work. Don't be afraid to partner with people and partner early, so that you either surround yourself with capabilities and knowledge you don't have, or you bring challenge to your understanding. And the last one is, go out and make friends, network. For any of you in here who are just starting out in your career and you don't give at least 20 business cards away over these 3 days, perhaps you should think of doing so.
Excellent. Antonio, your 30-second bottom line.
Yeah, I think for me the message is, well, for the people in academia, don't be afraid of us in pharma. For the people in pharma, don't be afraid from you in academia. So I think, one, we are forced to work together. We need to. I said that before. And so it's not only that we are forced, but that we have to. So let's work together and try to think on mechanisms to try to bring things forward. And it's not saying that all the research that has to be done in academia has to be done for application. On the contrary, that's the opposite. Most of it, or part of it at least, has to be done on basic science. We need it. But the part of the science that you are producing that can be transferred, don't be afraid to work. And yeah, the same to us, don't be afraid to work with you and try to make constructs and try to make that happen.
Mm-hmm. Carlos?
Okay, again for the young ones. Yes, to tell you, to emphasize that yes, it is possible to create biotech companies in Spain. Yes, it is possible to make them growth. Yes, it is possible that these biotechs made big deals with big pharmas. Yes, it is possible that these biotechs go public and they become more solid. So the fate is not written in stone, is what you want to make. And if you have a good idea and you have the energy and the commitment, you can do, and you can do the same way that is being done in Belgium, in the Netherlands, in UK. So just to cheer you up, I mean, this is possible, it's possible.
Yes, may I use my time to ask a question to the audience? Could you raise your hands, those of you that are thinking or willing to establish a company, a biotech or a startup or whatever? Only if you are thinking on doing it. One. Okay, there's one there. No more than one.
Another person over there, okay. Yeah, don't
Okay.
be shy. I mean, you don't have to.
Yes, you don't have to.
You have the aspiration
You don't
of
have
doing
to.
it.
You may be willing to do that, but you don't have to. Only one?
Two.
Okay, so my two. Okay, so my 30 seconds is go for it. Okay.
Go for it. Ainhoa?
Yeah, I don't know. I think you don't be afraid, and get closer to the companies to see how they work and try.
Yeah, it's very useful. They understand how the other half lives. It's very important.
Well, when I was working in the academia, I feel that I was so far from the patients. Working in a biotech company, in a pharma company, my feeling is that I am closer to the patients, and maybe this is the end of the research, not to go to the patient to solve problems, to create drugs and to solve diseases. The other point that may be interesting is that the companies are creating a lot of jobs, unspecialized jobs, and R&D. We are creating jobs for PhDs, and this is very important for our country. That we need to increase this value to create other different kind of work different to the tourists, for example, and maybe the biotech companies, the pharma companies can cover this gap that we need in this country.
Yeah, that's very important. The job. I'm an enemy of that, but it's true that job creation and getting experience, right? So people learn different things, different skills. Very important. Very good. My own 30-second pitch, if I may 30-second bottom line, is you cannot be half pregnant. Right? You're either pregnant or you're not. And the same thing is with commercializing science. You either do it and do it right or don't do it. Right? But to be half pregnant and like, well, maybe I want to do it, but I don't know, that is just not going to work. You're either pregnant or you're not. That's my my 30-second pitch. With that, why don't you join me in thanking the panel for their contribution with a round of applause.